This is Real Life with Deb Waterbury, a real show for real people with real issues. And now, here's your host, Dr. Deb Waterbury.
Welcome to another episode of Real Life with Deb Waterbury. I'm joined again today by my friend, with my friend. I'm not sure what preposition to use there. Elisa Medina.
I love how you say my name.
Why?
Medina.
It's not at all Hispanic, Spanish, or it is Hick. That's the Hick way you say Medina.
That's the Hick Hispanic version.
I tell people I do speak two languages, Hick and English.
You make me sound nicer.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, I like that.
You know, people, and this is totally off topic and so dumb, but I've noticed that people, whenever they're trying to be a persona of someone who's just really, really sweet, they do Southern.
They do.
But when they're trying to do a persona of someone who's really, really stupid, they do Southern. so I'm not really sure.
There you go.
I prefer the one, not the other, but I have noticed that they have a commonality there.
That's pretty funny.
I'm gonna try not to get. I mean, what we're gonna talk about today does kind of scratch at my arrow area with this. So we're talking about we're in our self-help series, and I think it's interesting to put a topic like this in self-help, because it really isn't self-help. You can't get over this by yourself.
No.
But
which is kind of the point.
It is the point, yes. So we're talking about pride today, and that is, you can stick pride in so many of the spiritual disciplines, all the things. There are lots of topics that this would fit under. But as we were talking about doing the self-help series, we really felt like putting something like this in a topic where we're trying, because when you think about self-help, you're thinking about improving yourself.
Yep.
And so this is an area I think all of us need some improvement.
Yes.
And and one of the things I've preached about this many times, and I think many people consider that they have no issue with pride because they're so shy, quiet and shy. So, in my opinion, that's if you're shy or you feel like people are just looking at you and you don't want to talk because you're quiet or whatever, that's pride.
That's pride.
Because you think people are looking at you.
Yes.
And I'm gonna tell you right now, most people don't give a flying flip or a rolling donut what you're saying or doing at any given moment in a room. I mean, and the fact that unless you're on stage, and even then, half of them, believe me, I know, aren't listening or paying any attention. So nobody's paying attention to you.
Right.
But we're so self-focused, and we are by nature prideful, that we think everybody's looking at us.
That's right.
I mean, it's that classic walking down the hallway at church, and so-and-so, Sally Mae, doesn't look at you right, and you're mad at her because you're thinking she's being rude when she was thinking about, maybe a sick relative or something.
Right.
She wasn't even thinking about you, but we assumed that. And the natural part of that is that we all, I only have me in here. Mm-hmm. I have the Holy Spirit too, but as far as, personalities and other people, I've got me. Yeah. So I'm going to interpret every situation through a lens of Deb. Everything is Deb, and then every situation is interpreted through that lens.
Yeah.
You interpret through a lens of Elisa, and Alex will interpret through a lens of Alex. That's what we do.
Yes.
The ability to not interpret through your own lens cannot be done by self.
No.
It has to be an extraordinary, crazy thing that only God can do.
Yeah.
So, but it is something we all have to deal with.
Yes, and it's always been the problem of the human condition.
Yes,
we think we know better.
Mm-hmm.
We know best,
mm-hmm.
and again, you're so right to kind of point out those areas where we might not think of as pride. I mean, if you talk to my husband, when we get in a fight, I just don't talk to him.
Oh.
I just don't talk to him for like 2 or 3 days. Well, what's that? That's pride. That's me just, that's not, I like to make it spiritual and say, I just don't want to sin in my words.
Isn't that lovely how we can do that?
Yes.
And turn it all around like I'm the spiritual one.
Right, but it's pride. And when the Lord starts saying, hey, Elisa, I think it's time for you to humble yourself and, go and apologize for your part in this. It's like, no, Lord.
I know, you don't want to.
There's just this pride that.
There is, and that pride, even though we can justify it in all kinds of ways.
Oh, yeah.
There's always a law that God has given us that we're breaking.
Yeah.
If you really look, for example, what you just said.
Yeah.
God very clearly says, you do not let the sun go down in your anger.
Right.
What that literally means is you don't sit on it.
Right.
It literally means you put self aside and say, this argument means nothing compared to the relationship.
Yes.
So therefore, even if I'm wrong, and even if I'm right, I will humble myself and seek reconciliation.
Yeah.
We don't do that naturally because we feel like we are owed reconciliation from the other side. We're right, I'm right, you're wrong, therefore you have to come reconcile with me.
That's right.
There's no humility there.
No, I've learned so much about this in the work that I do at Hands of Hope, because I'm a little bit younger when it comes to the pro-life movement, and so there was sort of this wave of up-and-coming younger leaders who just weren't honoring the ways that the former leaders used to do things.
Right.
And it was really their pride coming up and saying, well, we have a new way, we have a better way. And I sort of found myself falling into that in the early years until the Lord really checked my heart and said, Elisa, you can't possibly be right about everything.
Right.
You might have a few nuggets of things that you can bring to the table, but you need to humble yourself and learn from the people that have gone before you.
Yes, very
and
good.
I see that a lot in our culture right now with just the different age demographics. Of you have this younger group that says, you know, those old people are wrong. They've been doing it the wrong way. They don't know. They don't speak our language. But then you also see some pride in the older generation.
Yes.
And I think it's such a good tool of the evil one.
It's his best.
It's who he is. I mean, I like to call Satan by his names. So I would say pride and liar and thief. And so, it's tricky. And
it is tricky. And being able to recognize that any time you are moving in an avenue of I'm right, or I have the market cornered on knowledge here, and I am not humbling myself at the feet of whomever for humility. I mean, for harmony and for peace in that relationship. Anytime I stand back and say, no, I'm not doing that, that's pride.
That's right.
And there's lots of manifestations of pride, but I do believe that's probably the one that we don't recognize as often.
And it's in everything. I think, when you're raising young kiddos.
Yes.
You're watching other moms and how are they doing things, and they have the right way, and your ways. It's in everything, in marriage, in ministry.
And it's the biggest relationship breaker, in my opinion. I remember my daddy one time said, well, I don't know what you're talking about. I am the humblest person that ever walked the earth. And I was like, all right, so there we go. You can't rightly be humble and tell everybody that you are.
So I know some people who say those things. We won't say names on this.
Exactly. Well, although I just said my daddy. He knows I love him. The thing, though, is that it manifests itself that way with me, too. So, as I pray over a couple scriptures. I wasn't surprised by the ones that came, but there was one that I was not surprised by, but genuinely, that's one we should talk about when we talk about pride. So the first one, obviously, James 4:10, humble yourself before the Lord, and He'll lift you up. That's hard because we feel like we need to advocate for self, which is one of my biggest things, is that I'm a big self-advocator. So not that I brag, but I will say, look, I'm the person for the job. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's your heart issue there that leads you in that. Are you doing it because you want to be a kingdom builder, or are you doing it because you want to be a Deb builder?
Right. And sometimes that's hard to know, too. And I think of the verse, too, that says pride comes before a fall. See, God cares so much more about our character than what we can do for Him. And I've been humbled.
That, sister. That's good stuff. Because we think it's about the work.
Right.
And especially if you're in ministry, you often think it's about the work. That God is honored in me the more I do for Him.
That's right.
And the truth is, He doesn't need me.
No, but we have this culture. I remember one day someone gave me a gift for my desk that said, "No rest for the blessed." And I thought, isn't that we're just busy. We'll take a nap in heaven. We'll be busy for the Lord. And all of these things are it's underlying pride.
It is underlying pride, because I want everybody to look at me and realize I'm blessed and therefore I am busier than you.
Right.
I do more than you. I do more kingdom work than you.
Right.
It is about a heart issue. And I think you're so right. That's so wise, Elisa, that God is so much more interested in my character than any books I write, than any shows I do, than any conferences I speak at. Anything I do has nothing pales in comparison to whether or not my character exemplifies Christ's.
And He was a servant. I mean, when we really, you want to be challenged. I think about just Jesus, His ministry, and His humility and His service. I mean, He was never demanding His own right.
No.
He was the opposite of pride. And so I think that's our flesh that we daily have to.
And we will make it so spiritual. We'll act like it's so. I just wrote an article for a magazine and the article was called "Spiritual Gifts." Something without encouragement without agenda, I think, something like that. But anyway, what this magazine wanted from me was an article about spiritual gifts and what they are and how to know what yours is, which is what everybody wants to know. Of course, that's not the way I went about it, because as I'm writing it, the Lord told me, no, this needs to be about pride. And so as I got to the end, I said, at the end of the day, your spiritual gifts are really secondary to the service you have in the kingdom.
I love that.
And so what I said was, you may have a gifting toward teaching, but that girl sitting over in the corner alone on the pew needs someone to talk to her and maybe take her to coffee.
Yeah.
That's going to get you no accolades. You're not teaching anybody anything, but that's what's needed. Yeah. You may have a gift of administration and think that's what you're supposed to be doing, and that's good. You should move in that gift.
Right.
But what's needed right now is someone to mind the nursery.
Yeah.
So your gifts, your spiritual gifts we can also twist those around and they become prideful things, because it's like, no, I'm not going to work in the nursery. My gifting's teaching.
And that's a good test.
Something on me to teach.
Especially as you've been promoted in your life. I mean, I still look around at pastors and leaders who will clean up.
Yes.
At a get-together, or I know a pastor in town who will say hello to everyone. He'll just walk the courtyard and say hello, and I think that's rare. It shouldn't be.
It's becoming rare.
Yeah.
And my son and I were just having this conversation, the same thing, about he's helping to launch a church, and he said, Mom, I just wish pastors would understand that getting sweaty and moving stuff around is so much more manifestation of Christ than standing there and watching everybody else do it and direct them.
Yeah.
I remember one of my favorite pastors in this city, and I won't name him, but if he's watching, he'll know I'm talking about him. One of the things I loved most about him is I spoke at this 12-week-long conference at his church, and we were down in the basement, the women were, and every single time we got done, here he's the pastor, he's a senior pastor, it's a big church. Yeah. He would come down and they had this funny vacuum cleaner that literally strapped to your back.
Oh yeah, I actually appreciate those vacuum cleaners.
So he'd come down with the back vacuum strap to his back and vacuum the floor. And I was so moved and so appreciative of his willingness to serve the women of his church in this way.
Yeah.
To me, God is so honored in that humility. And it's what we have to move, and you're right, the more promoted you get, the least likely you are to do that.
Right.
So the other scripture he had given me that I thought was good, though I would not have thought of this one, was Philippians 2:3. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but rather in humility value others above yourself. And that...
So the word nothing.
Yes, I think that's the
really?
hard part,
it's like do nothing.
Nothing. No thing.
To self-promote or preserve, or
right.
I mean, those are the scriptures that, be anxious for nothing. Really nothing here?
Yeah,
do nothing
don't get
without
most
selfish
things, or try your hardest.
Yeah.
Literally, God sets the bar at, perfection. Well, what did Jesus say? You have to be perfect as your Father in heaven's perfect. So he didn't say you have to be perfect to go to heaven.
Right.
But he's saying there's your bar. There's no bar underneath where you go, well, I can just get to this bar. Your bar is here. Yeah. And not that we have grace, thank God that we have a God of grace, but we are shooting for the perfection.
That's right.
And my son and I were also talking about this, because I was asking for his prayers in some direction that I was about to maybe move in my ministry, and I said, so just pray that I hear him correctly, that I'm doing his will. And my son, because he loves me, goes, well, Mom, you are. Of course you are. And I said, well, Miles, I might be, but there's always that chance that I'm self-serving.
Right. And the problem with being deceived is we don't know we're deceived.
That's right.
I mean,
that's the trick of being deceived.
Right.
Yeah. And so you don't want to, I'm so aware of my propensity toward pride.
Oh, yes.
That I'm hyper vigilant with, Lord, what are my motivations? If my motivations are impure, then either stop me from doing this thing or clean out my heart.
Yeah.
Whatever, because I know my propensity. And don't you think that's the trick?
Yeah.
It's an understanding that no matter who you are, and no matter who you are listening to me right now, you're prideful.
Yeah. We all are.
Yes, we are. We all move from that lens of self. Being able to move outside of that lens and consider everything from a place outside of self doesn't come naturally. It will never happen unless you make the effort to do that. And even then, it'll seem horrible, because you really want to think about yourself.
Yeah.
That's going to be your nature always.
A couple of things that have really helped me reposition myself when I'm not sure, because I'm a lot like you too. I just want to be in the will of God. Is instead of going to prayer right away, sometimes I'll just start with worship and exalting the Lord, because then that gives me a proper perspective that He is God. And then my prayer life now is, God, I don't even know what to pray.
Right.
Like my heart is so wickedly deceitful. I mean, I am looking out for my own self-interest and the interest of my family, but God, I don't want that. So show me how to pray.
Yes, very good.
And
that's so good that it should start with worship.
Yeah, we're so quick to ask. You
Or
know?
even praise, I even sometimes will start my prayers with, Lord, you are so good. And so,
yes.
But when I've started my prayers literally, I mean, not with just verbally praising, but within song praising.
Yes.
Man, you're right. You cannot, there's no way you can be focused on self when you are singing about how good he is.
Yes. And the characteristics of who he is. It's just almost like a chiropractor adjusting your
It is, yes.
Adjusting your heart.
And we can do that, but you have to be mindful to do that.
Yeah.
And mindful to do that in all things, and with your children, with your husbands, with your wives, with your friends, with your church, with your ministry, whatever your ministry is. And we all have a ministry, so don't be thinking that people who are in ministry have ministry. We all do.
That's right.
And understanding what steps to make within whatever the Lord has laid in front of you as ministry, to do those outside of pride is intentional. You have to be intentional with that, and not assume that, well, I don't really deal that much with pride. Well, now you do, because you just said that.
Right. Or you're just deceived, and the enemy would love you to think that you don't.
Yeah.
And we all do.
We all do.
And
that's part of humility is recognizing that you're prideful.
Right.
Because it takes a humble person to go, yeah, I got some pride going on. Because it takes humility to recognize you're not perfect.
Right.
And that there's something wrong with you. And it is going to be pride always. Now, before we leave, there's one question that I wanted to talk about more than anything, and that is pride really being the root of every kind of sin.
It really is.
And so why do you think that's the case? I mean, and why do you think pride is the instigator for every sin?
I think it goes back to thinking we know better than the Lord.
I agree.
I just think of Satan and how he thought he could do better, he could rule better.
Yes.
And so then it just clouds our true reality, our kingdom reality.
Right.
And I think whether it's you're not content with what you have, or you think you want a better job, or you're not happy in your marriage, or why aren't your kids turning out this way? It's just junk.
Yes.
I think, it boils down to pride and not believing that God is who he says he is.
Right.
And not believing that he cares for you and has a plan and a purpose for you. And so every sin, really, pride is the root.
Right.
And
absolutely.
it's so destructive.
It is. And because, and I think you're absolutely right. A while back at that church that I was talking about, one of the messages I gave was about pride, and what I was saying was how sin is mixed into that. The true definition of sin is choosing something over God.
Right.
You've just, no matter what your sin
missing
is,
the mark. Yep.
Yes, you chose the pleasure of that, you chose the value of that, you chose this thing over God. And anytime you choose anything over God, you're walking in pride.
Right.
Because you're saying, I'm more important.
Right. That's why we're so desperate for more of him and less of us.
Yes.
Because we can't, what you said at the beginning was, we cannot do this on our own. I mean, we are just not capable.
No, we're incapable. That's exactly right.
But Christ in us, he who is in us is greater than he who is in the world. And I even think, sometimes we think about that as Satan all the time, but that's my own self. That's my own flesh.
Yeah, they're saying that the devil made me do it is just totally, he did not make you do anything.
Right.
You chose
He didn't even need to help me with that.
And even I tell women this all the time that I counsel, you can go back to some situation that said, but this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and therefore then I made this choice.
Right.
No. That happened, that happened, that happened, that happened, and then there came a moment
where
you choose to do this or that. Yeah. When you choose to do that, which is sinful, you can't blame another soul. You can't blame Satan. You can't blame all the mean, terrible things he may have instigated in your life. Yeah. Because God gave you a moral free will. And at that moment, you get to choose.
That's right.
Am I going to choose God, or am I going to choose this sin? Now, you may be deceived like crazy, and you can, there's lots of excuses and reasons there, but at the end of the day, you make a choice.
That's right.
To sin or not to sin, to choose God or yourself. Yeah. And again, I think that we will have a propensity to choose self often if we're very damaged and hurt.
Yes, because now you're protecting, which is still pride in its truest form. And I think that lends to, and I know we could talk about this on a whole other show, but what keeps us from not forgiving?
Yes,
pride.
Yes.
I mean, and
it does.
It does. And so again, any sin that has been wrong, anytime I've been wronged, I mean, it could be terrible. And I've had some terrible things. You've had some terrible things. none of that compares to Christ.
No, or what he did on my behalf.
Right, and that he was the only one
Yes.
who had the right to say, no, I'm perfect, and you wronged me. And so again, I think we think we're above him when we choose not to forgive.
Or at least above others.
Yeah.
We think we
minimally.
figure that, we're above, that person doesn't
Right.
deserve my forgiveness.
Right. Right. Which is pride.
Which is pride. It's all,
Lord help us.
Yes, because that's that's your first instinct. So understand that God is God, and he tells us, he says to us, the way he loves us is to reveal himself to us. Because only in seeing him will we understand the perfection that comes and will come with that peace, love, joy, contentment, and harmony. The 5 things you guys have heard me say over and over again. The 5 qualities, the 5 characteristics which should embody every believer. Peace, love, joy, contentment, and harmony. That's what we should be living in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every single day of the year. When we don't, and we never do.
Right.
But when we don't, it's because we have lost sight of God
Yes.
and who he is. And if this is good, and there are no cracks in that
Right.
vertical,
Everything else works out.
everything else will work out, and you can live in those 5 things. But when you're not, it's because there's a crack in your vertical, and it has everything to do with your vision of God, not about what so-and-so and so-and-so did or how those things have worked out.
Right.
Anytime you think it's that, it's pride, because it now becomes about you again. Pride is the way of the enemy, because it will take you down a road you don't even know you're on until you're way, way down it. So recognizing that God is God and you are not is the first step. But even beyond that, recognizing that despite that, God loves everything about you.
Yeah.
And that the Bible literally says that he named you, chose you before the foundation of time, that he already had his eyes laid on you.
Yeah.
So that's how much he loves you. It's a beautiful love by the God of this universe. And so if you make everything about him, then pride can be absent in your decisions.
Yeah. He's so good.
Taking my own advice, and we'll try anyway. Again, if you have comments, please comment below. We'd love to be able to hear what you have to say, any advice you have or wisdom. I certainly never mean to say that I have the market cornered on wisdom. As a matter of fact, I often have no market cornered in anything, much less wisdom. So if you have some to share, please feel free. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. Thank you, Elisa.
Thank you, Deb.
God bless you all. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for joining me today on this episode of Real Life with Deb Waterbury. I hope it's been a blessing to you as much as it was to me. If you want any of my books or information on articles or any of my speaking engagements, you can go to my website at debwaterbury.com. God bless you.